Hello everyone. Welcome back to Hello My Friend. Today, we have a wonderful story for you, the tale of Pinocchio. This is a great way to practice your English while enjoying a classic story filled with adventure, lessons about honesty, and the importance of making good choices. So, get comfortable, follow along, and let's discover the magical journey of Pinocchio together. Ready? Let's start. Once upon a time, there was a lonely carpenter named Geppetto. He lived in a small wooden house, surrounded by toys and objects he made himself. Geppetto was very talented in his work, but he felt something was missing in his life. He wished he had a son. One day, Geppetto decided to create a special wooden puppet. He carved it with great care, giving it the shape of a little boy, and named him Pinocchio. When he finished, he looked at the puppet and sighed, "How I wish you were a real boy." That night, while Geppetto slept, a bright star appeared in the sky. A blue fairy came down from the sky and entered Geppetto's house. She saw the wooden puppet and, hearing Geppetto's wish, touched Pinocchio with her magic wand. "Pinocchio," said the blue fairy, "I will give you life. But to become a real boy, you must be brave, truthful, and generous." Pinocchio blinked his eyes and started to move. He was alive! When Geppetto woke up, he couldn't believe his eyes. He hugged Pinocchio with joy, feeling that he finally had the son he had always wished for. Pinocchio was full of curiosity about the world around him. Geppetto was so happy that he decided to take care of Pinocchio like a true father. He said, "Pinocchio, I want you to go to school and learn everything about the world. But remember, always be a good boy." The blue fairy, who had given life to Pinocchio, appeared to him once again. She said, "Remember, Pinocchio, to become a real boy, you must be brave, truthful, and generous. Always listen to your father and follow the right path." Pinocchio promised to be a good boy and follow the advice of the fairy and Geppetto. But he was very curious and easily distracted. While he was on his way to school, he began to see other interesting things that attracted him. Jiminy Cricket, a small cricket that the blue fairy had left to be his conscience, said, "Pinocchio, you must go to school. Remember what your father and the fairy told you." Pinocchio nodded, but in his heart, he wanted to explore. The world seemed so full of adventures and fun things to do. As Pinocchio walked to school, he passed by a square where there was a big poster announcing a puppet show. Pinocchio was enchanted to see the puppets dancing and singing on stage. He thought, "How fun! I want to see more." Ignoring Jiminy Cricket's warnings, Pinocchio approached the theater and was invited in by the owner of the show, a man named Stromboli. Stromboli saw that Pinocchio was a wooden puppet who could speak and move without strings, and he thought he would be a great attraction for his show. "Come, little puppet. You will be the star of my show," said Stromboli with a sly smile. Pinocchio, curious and flattered, decided to stay. He went on stage and began to dance with the puppets, charming the audience. He had a lot of fun, but when the show ended, he wanted to go home. However, Stromboli didn't want to let Pinocchio go. "You will stay with me and perform every day. I will make a lot of money with you," said Stromboli, locking Pinocchio in a cage. Pinocchio regretted not going to school as he had promised. He was trapped and didn't know what to do. Trapped in Stromboli's cage, Pinocchio began to cry. He realized he had made a big mistake by disobeying Geppetto and not going to school. While he sobbed, the blue fairy appeared before him. "Pinocchio, why didn't you go to school?" asked the blue fairy gently. Pinocchio, afraid to tell the truth, answered, I went to school, but two monsters captured me and put me in this cage." As soon as he said that, his nose started to grow. Pinocchio was surprised and touched his nose, which continued to grow with every lie he told. The blue fairy shook her head and said, "Pinocchio, lies are easily noticed. The truth is clear and never grows like lies." Pinocchio, embarrassed, confessed, "I'm sorry, I lied. I wanted to see the puppet show and was captured by Stromboli." The blue fairy smiled and, with a wave of her wand, freed Pinocchio from the cage. Remember, Pinocchio, lies only bring trouble. Follow the right path and always tell the truth. Pinocchio promised to be honest and started back home, but in his heart, he was still very curious about the world around him. On his way back home, Pinocchio met a mischievous boy named Lampwick. Lampwick told Pinocchio about a wonderful place called the Land of Toys, where there was no school, no rules, and boys could play all day without worries. Pinocchio, attracted by the idea of so much fun, hesitated. Jiminy Cricket appeared and warned, "Pinocchio, don't go. The Land of Toys seems fun, but it's not a good place. You promised to be a good boy and go home." But Pinocchio, ignoring the cricket's advice, decided to follow Lampwick to the Land of Toys. When they got there, it seemed like a true paradise. There were toys everywhere, sweets, games, and many boys having fun. Pinocchio thought, "This is amazing. I never want to go to school again." He and Lampwick spent the whole day playing, eating sweets, and doing whatever they wanted. But Pinocchio did not know that the Land of Toys had a terrible secret. Those who indulged in temptations and laziness would end up paying a high price. After several days of having fun in the Land of Toys, something strange began to happen. Pinocchio noticed that his ears were growing and becoming pointed. When he touched his nose, he realized it was lengthening, and his skin began to be covered in fur. Lampwick also started to transform. "What's happening to us?" he shouted, but before he could understand, he let out a bray and completely turned into a donkey. Pinocchio tried to speak, but all that came out was a donkey's bray. He was terrified to realize that he was transforming too. Pinocchio realized too late that the Land of Toys was a trap. There, all the boys who ignored their responsibilities ended up turning into donkeys and being sold as beasts of burden. Jiminy Cricket found Pinocchio and tried to help him. "I warned you, Pinocchio. Now we need to find a way out of here," said the cricket. Even with donkey ears and a tail, Pinocchio followed Jiminy Cricket and escaped from the Land of Toys, feeling regretful and scared by his bad choices. After escaping the Land of Toys, Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket heard terrible news. Geppetto, Pinocchio's father, had gone out looking for him and had been swallowed by a giant whale while sailing in the sea. Pinocchio was desperate to hear that his dear father was in danger. "I need to save Papa," he exclaimed, full of courage. Even with his donkey ears, Pinocchio ran to the seashore and jumped into the deep waters. He swam and swam, never giving up, until he found the great whale. With a brave dive, he entered the enormous mouth of the animal and ended up in its stomach. There, in the darkness, he heard a familiar voice. "Papa," shouted Pinocchio. "It's me, Pinocchio. I've come to save you." Geppetto was amazed to see Pinocchio. "My son. I was so worried about you," he said, hugging him tightly. They were relieved to be together again, but now they needed to find a way out of the whale's belly. With intelligence and teamwork, Pinocchio and Geppetto had an idea. They lit a fire using the pieces of wood they found, and the smoke made the whale sneeze. With a great sneeze, the whale threw Geppetto and Pinocchio back into the sea, freeing them. After escaping the whale, Pinocchio and Geppetto swam back to shore, exhausted but relieved to be safe. Geppetto, with tears in his eyes, hugged Pinocchio and said, "My son, I was so worried. I love you so much." Pinocchio, moved, replied, "I love you too, Papa. I'm sorry for not listening to your advice and making bad choices. I promise I will be a good boy and always tell the truth." The Blue Fairy, seeing that Pinocchio had shown courage, honesty, and generosity by risking his life to save his father, appeared before them. "Pinocchio," she said, "you have learned a lot and shown that you have a true heart. Now, you deserve to become a real boy." With a touch of her magic wand, the Blue Fairy turned Pinocchio into a real flesh-and-blood boy. Geppetto cried with joy to see his dream come true. Pinocchio, now a real boy, lived happily alongside Geppetto. He always remembered the lessons he learned, to be brave, truthful, generous, and, above all, to follow the right path. And so, Pinocchio and Geppetto lived happily ever after, with hearts full of love and gratitude. Thank you for joining us on this magical journey with Pinocchio. If you enjoyed the story and found it helpful for your English practice, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to Hello My Friend for more stories, lessons, and tips to help you learn English. Your support helps us create more great content for you. See you in the next video, and keep practicing your English every day.